In My Humble Opinion is supported by RC Tree Service. Owner Ricky Butler offers services in tree removal, tree topping, stump removal, mulching, snow removal, deck repairs, and much, much more. Telephone number is 540-359-9469. 24-hour emergency services with over 30 years experience, licensed and insured. Welcome, family. You're tuned in to In My Humble Opinion, and today's show is titled Life's Questions. We'll get into that in just a little bit. So a few of the people that I called in: Rebecca Weybright. She's been a previous guest on In My Humble Opinion. She's the executive director of Sarah. Okay. Andrea Copeland-Whitsett. Charlottesville is very familiar with this young lady, entrepreneur and director of the Business Diversity Council. Okay. So she was gracious enough to join me. Jude Rogers, who is, she and her husband, her family, are personal friends of mine and raisers. I've known her since I was a young girl. They own multiple businesses, and I've always just known this family for just having a heart for people, and they've always taken children into their home, whether it be adopting children or giving them a temporary residence until other things happen for them. But that's always been their heart, right. And that's because she was adopted herself. And so you'll hear a little bit more about that later in the show. Mahalia Dryden-Mason, we met at a seminar at the Charlottesville Housing Authority for fair housing. And Mahalia works for the Department of Professional and Occupation Regulation. Another guest is Davida Wingfield. Davida wears a lot of hats. Right. She's an entrepreneur, but we actually met because we were discussing grant writing, which is one of her professions. And so she will be joining us. And then, of course, again, no stranger to In My Humble Opinion, Nikki Giovanni, author. And I actually went out to Virginia Tech and sat down with Nikki. I met Nikki and Nikki's little dog.
Oh, it's like that.
It's like that.
It's like that.
That was
Dinner
very cool.
Nikki,
It was very
okay.
cool. I saw the Thug Life tattoo. No, seriously.
Well, it's real.
So Nikki Giovanni, you guys know her, professor out of Virginia Tech, and poet and author. So.
All right. Well, and Max, I was so delighted when you presented this opportunity to me. I'm looking forward to this show, and I hope it's an ongoing thing, and I believe our listeners will enjoy it and benefit from it. So you tasked me with reaching out to a group of brothers who I felt could have great conversation with, as well as benefit our listeners. Someone who the listeners would be engaged by. So I have Mr. Aaron Simmons, no stranger to our show, right. Commentator on the show from time to time, and he is a financial advisor by trade, but jack of many trades. And I know the listeners love hearing his expertise.
That's right.
We also have Chris Newman himself, VA Doe, no stranger to 101
Always
Jams.
a comedian. That's
right. Sitting across the table from this young brother, love his insight. Born and raised in Seville, so his perspective is priceless. We have Matthew Murphy. He's a minister to some, and he's a project assistant to others when it comes to human resources here in the city. Delightful brother to speak with. Local business owner and entrepreneur Quinton Harrell. Some of y'all may know him from Seville Players as Papers, but Mr. Quinton Harrell still doing big things, good things in the community. And lastly, but definitely not least, local business owner Mr. William Jones over at In His Image Salon. Brother always willing to open his heart and wear it on his sleeve for the betterment of our people. To help another brother out. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm just overjoyed right now. I'm so excited to get to to all of these answers and questions. And wow, yeah, without further ado.
All right. So let's listen to what our guests have to say about this one. What is the lesson it has taken you the longest to learn?
Through disappointments, trust in the Lord. Through pain, trust in the Lord. Through confusion, through disenfranchisement, through blatant persecution and discrimination and injustice, trust in the Lord. This is very difficult.
But you know that also applies when times are good, because when times are good, we think we got it all in control, and the decisions are easy or obvious. And we still have to remember to do that.
We do, because then we don't think that we need to go to the Lord and ask him for direction. But thankfully, he is wiser than us. So that brings me back to when I do finally come to that realization that he has protected me through that, that he will direct me through that, and he will correct me through that.
Forgiveness and letting go.
Okay.
Took me 30 some years to learn a lesson about something that was beyond my control, and I finally had to just deal with it and recognize that a lot of it, I was holding on to bitterness and anger. I was kind of holding myself up. I don't absolve the person of their responsibility, but I realized that there were some things I had control over. And so it took me 30 some years to realize I needed to forgive to set myself free.
So for a person that needs to know or need to learn how to forgive, what advice do you give?
Well, I Max, I'll tell you, I could not reach this point of forgiveness without Christ in my life and without knowing that I could do it with God. Because God showed the ultimate form of forgiveness, and that was becoming flesh in the form of Jesus Christ and giving himself willingly on the cross for me. And for my sin and the sins and the sin of this world. That's the ultimate testament of forgiveness. And so I had to keep reminding myself, even when I wasn't deserving of forgiveness, this individual, despite the evilness of what that individual did, it still wasn't an unforgivable sin. I still had to make the choice to forgive. And that's it. Forgiveness is the choice. It is a choice. A person isn't going to necessarily earn or deserve your respect, but you have to make the choice to forgive them anyway.
One of the biggest lessons that I've been thinking about recently that's taken me a long time to learn was being confident and comfortable in what I'm good at. I think what's happened in my lifetime is that people recognize a certain ability or acumen or characteristic in myself sometimes before I give my own self credit for it or really embrace it and try to do something with it. And so that's been the biggest thing that I think I've discovered over the years is just, what am I good at? Embracing that and amplifying that,
Mom used to say every skin teeth is not a grin. I didn't understand that. She broke it down. Not everyone that smiles at you or smiles with you, not everyone that breaks bread with you is your friend. And that even comes down to family members. So for me, it's been the hardest to not trust. I trust everyone, which makes me vulnerable enough.
You want to see the good in people.
Be hurt.
Right.
Yes. And when you trust people and you give them that trust, you're also saying to them, I'm allowing you to enter into my life and to be yourself. But you're also saying to them, I'm allowing you to also hurt me in things. So even your family members, you love them and you trust them and you think that they'll never hurt you. But unfortunately, sometimes they do.
Do you think that going back to the human experience, do you think that we can have the human experience in all of its glory without making ourselves vulnerable to people?
No, I don't think so. And I do believe that that's part of taking a chance, even at love.
What advice would you give your younger self?
You can't be that stupid. Really? You really thought that was going to work differently?
What would I tell my younger self? Ask yourself, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh my God. Oh man, we'd have to have a real long sit down.
We have to chop it up.
You know what? I think if I ran into him, I would have some stuff I'd have to explain to him. Like if I'd be like, what? Your future me? I never get taller? What? What's going on here? Where's my hair? What did you do to me?
Oh man.
But honestly, man, that's funny. That's really, I put a lot of thought into this. I don't know if you noticed, but I would definitely tell my younger self, stay focused, man. Stay focused. There are so many distractions out there, and you're gonna get distracted, and you're gonna fall a bunch of times. You're gonna try to do it differently, and you're still gonna fall. There's a reason you fall. Keep your head up. Don't listen to your guidance counselor. Go to college.
Right.
Like, go out of your way to get some type of bachelor's degree. The whole time, you're going to tell yourself, this is BS. I don't need to be here to be successful. Why am I here? But trust me, brother, get that piece of paper. You know what I'm saying? It's worth being in debt for. You're going to wind up in debt about a bunch of stuff anyway. So
for sure.
Put student loans on there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Just enjoy life a little more. My sister and I talk about this. When we were little, we wanted so badly to be adults. We wanted to be grown. We wanted to live out on our own, and we wanted to even develop fast and all that stuff. And I just think back on how life was so simpler and easier when we were kids. The parents dealt with the bills. The parents dealt with everything, you know. We just had this, we were so innocent and didn't even realize how good we had it. We didn't have the cares that we have now. So I would tell my younger self, stop trying to grow up so fast. Enjoy being a child. And, you know, I look back on my childhood, my sister and I had overall, for the most part, had a great childhood. But I still think, you know, like so many kids, we want to grow up so fast. And, but I would tell my younger self, enjoy being young. Enjoy the carefree life. Because in time, you'll be old enough.
That's right.
That stuff will come.
What I would tell Papers?
Yeah. There you go. What would you tell Papers?
Yeah, what I tell Papers, or Lil Q, Lil Quinton.
You can go right back right now.
Yeah.
Give us some advice.
Man, one thing I would tell Lil Q is to not second guess yourself. And realize that you have more to offer to the world than what you're learning in society. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because, you know, it's like it happens in different ways. Our educational system does it. The way we operate in amongst each other, among the races. Kids get inculcated with low self-esteem.
Yep.
Based on the social construct, right? And you end up second guessing yourself as a kid, as a black kid, a young black kid,
especially.
You know what I mean? You end up second guessing yourself. You know, so any child can have a little, you know, low self-esteem, but it seems like there's a special case for the young black boy. So that would be one thing that I would tell Lil Q is to don't second guess yourself, because you can do so much more. Another thing would be to don't sleep on
investment. And that would probably be like an older, like a mid-20s papers.
Okay.
Like, yo, don't sleep on your investment. Investment of your time and investment of your dough. Like, because it can grow.
Right.
So I started investing when I was young, and I was just like, okay, I'm trying to think of all ways to get money. Let me do this as well. But then I might set aside several $1,000s in an investment. But then things get funky. I've gone back to it and grabbed it.
Okay.
And taken it out and used it for something else.
Just waited it out.
And also having a lack of trust in the system that I'm always expecting for anything dealing with institutional investment, insurance, whatever the case may be. I always looked at it and anticipated getting beat. Okay. Like the system gonna beat me. I'm a young black man.
Right.
So they're gonna get out on me. They're gonna come up with something to beat me. You know what I mean? So I would tell my younger self, not to sleep on investment and self-defeat and operate in this self-defeating mindset.
Definitely trust more and think less. And the last question.
Who are we trusting? We trusting ourselves?
Well, we're trusting God.
Okay.
When I got around 40, I realized that if there was a hard way to do something, that I was going to find it. And so, as a result, when I looked back, I saw that I had been carrying a lot of false burdens, struggling where there was no struggle, having a hard time where there was not a hard time, because I was overly intellectualizing life. Like, don't push. And this was not necessarily a Christian principle. It's just something I picked up along the way. But I'm sure that it can be codified through the scriptures. But don't push. That's how one way I learned a discipline, because I would imagine whenever I come up against a challenge, or I have the feeling of being overwhelmed, or something I desire to accomplish. Most of the time it's about accomplishing something, because my currency is productivity. And so I feel actualized when I'm accomplishing goals,
right?
Which may not necessarily be the best thing, but that's my personality. And so I visualize like the ocean. And when you push against the ocean, the waves go away from you. But if you stand still, they come towards you.
Gotcha.
And so that's what happens. So when you want something, the more you push, the further away it can seem.
So I'm going to test you with this question. It's not on the list.
Okay.
But it's based on your responses. So I hear you saying that we have a soul that's connected to God. We are creators because of God. In order to, you would have been further along in life, or wish you had to learn the lesson earlier, to listen to God. So there's a reoccurring theme. So for our listeners out there who say, I hear what you're saying, and I believe in all of those things in terms of listening to guidance, or being a creator, or considering myself, maybe, I don't know if it's a poor example, but considering myself God-like, but this is where I'm leading to. What if those people are saying either, I don't really believe in God though, so can I accomplish all of those things that you're talking about without professing a God? Or B, I don't know if I know him well enough. You're telling me to meditate, and then the answers will come to me, but I don't really know enough to be able to do that. So for the listeners out there that say, I want all those things that she's talking about, but she's saying I can only get to them through God. I don't believe in God. Family hasn't believed in God. Never learned about God. Don't have a deep enough relationship to know how to do those things, Miss Wingfield. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say to Christians and non-Christians alike that we should not be naive. Okay. All people, children, babies, elderly people, all people, Satanists, Christians, everybody from one spectrum to the other are created in the image and likeness of God. So we are all creators. But divine purpose only exists in the true and the living God.
It's sex. It's women, man. I would tell myself to wait. Like I would tell myself not to be so gung-ho about entering into that lifestyle. Because you got your whole life to live and chase women or be with one woman. Like you have a life of that. So to try to start around 10 to get started at 15, like it's just too early for a person. Like we don't know enough at that time in our life to start engaging in that way and to have control over it. And so for me, sex has kind of ruled a big portion of my life, and not in no sick way, but in a very kind of like low key, lull you to sleep kind of way. I went to work to make money, to get dressed, to get girls. You know what I'm saying? Like I went to the club to get girls. I put myself in situations, and most of it throughout my teenage to adult life was all for girls and to have sex, because I didn't even want to be with a lot of them. It wasn't to get married. It was largely to have sex. And so you take on that mindset so early, you release all of these endorphins and stuff in your brain to the point where this is all you look for.
I thought about that too. I thought it was an interesting question. I don't think I would advise my younger self.
Really?
Well, why should I? All I'm going to do is go through the next day. What I don't want to do is something terrible. I don't want to hurt somebody. Okay. I'm very, very fortunate, knock on wood, that and I've never killed anything. And I was talking to a friend who she lives in the country, and so when she comes to work in the morning, the deer are out. And so she's hit a couple of deer, throughout the thing. And I said to her, I'm just really fortunate. I haven't hit a deer, I haven't hit a bear, I haven't run over, some little animal. And I think that's lucky. And so one of the things you're trying to do is you're trying not to hurt something. So that's a long way of saying that. You're just trying to go through the day and not do something crazy. Because what I've learned, and I have learned things, but what I have learned has brought me to this point. Okay. And if I didn't learn that, then I wouldn't be here. So I'm not going to, I said, my class and I were talking about that, as I say, but I wouldn't go back and say, boy, I wouldn't do that, because if I didn't do that, then something would miss. Right. And then there I'd be here without having this knowledge. So I'm not going to blame myself on that one. And I advise other people not to, because what you have to do is you're just living your life, and there are things that at some point you say, boy, that was interesting. If I hadn't known that, I wouldn't know this. But you can't say that was a mistake, because if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have this.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Mahalia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
Next up, what is the hardest decision that you had to make in order to fulfill your personal destiny? Check out what our guests have to say about fulfilling their personal destiny.
Not being popular anymore. I think that the more mature you get, you realize that things that are popular are not always correct. And things that are correct are not always popular. But not being popular, having different views, and believing in those views and standing with those views because they come from your soul and they come from your gut. And in this society, man, as a black male, I mean, it's difficult because you're consistently told that you can't solve problems, or the problems you're trying to solve, you know, can you really do what you're supposed to do on this planet and help black people and help the people that you love and do those particular things without compromising yourself? And I think that's a really, really difficult thing for a lot of people, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people, man. I really think is that losing popularity. You know, that's one of those things when I look at some of the elders like Dr. Welsing and anybody that just kind of goes against the grain, it's not popular. Can you live with not being popular? But if you know what's correct, do you stand?
Yeah.
And that's the human. I think that's what people battle every single day. I think you can see that in a lot of musicians. I think you can see that in a lot of entertainers. But in any walk of life is just, can you stand without everybody liking you? Especially when you come from an environment to where everybody always likes you, regardless.
Yeah.
Then if you have a different stance on something, or if you believe in your heart that this is incorrect, can you stand on that premise? And are you willing to even take the stones that come with it?
Right.
Will you fight for it? You know, that's why I have a tremendous amount of admiration for anybody that stands up for justice, because typically you are not going to be popular if you're telling the truth.
Yeah. Now,
information. Now, if you're just doing some tomfoolery, eventually people are going to see through it. But if you're telling accurate information, there is a huge chance you are not going to be popular. You're not going to be liked. And also, unfortunately, your life is going to be in danger too. And but those are things that we need more people to stand on.
Yeah, I feel like I've been pretty fortunate in life in a lot of ways, and I recognize that I've had a lot of privilege. For instance, I never questioned going to college. I knew that would always be an option for me. And I really don't believe a lot in trying to second guess what I did at a certain time. I believe that overall, when we're faced with a difficult decision, you make the best decision you can based on what you know then, and you just go forward. I'm not a big believer in trying to ruminate over something. I think when I've faced a difficult decision, I've tried to make the best I can, and then you just know you've made it and you go forward. That doesn't mean I haven't tried to learn from mistakes, but I think most of the time if I made mistakes, I did the best I could do at that particular time. So I really try to live my life that way, and I feel pretty strongly that I'm able to do that. Okay.
It's self-doubt. I beat that one up. I beat my way up out of that. That was very difficult. In my line of business, you gotta understand, you don't run across as many dudes as me, and it comes off as I'm fearless. And I'm fearless of what I look like or what you think of me. That's why it's so easy for me to just blah, 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 because there's no fear. I'm not second thinking anything. I just blurt it out. I know I'm on the radio. All I have to do is make sure I don't cuss. I can say any ridiculous thing that I want without cussing. I can do that all day. You know what I'm saying? That became my superpower, man. And that's what made me special. Not being scared of failing, looking stupid, looking immature, you know what I'm saying? Looking jealous, insecure. I'm not scared of what I look like to people, you know what I mean? I'm just me, man. And at some point, people just started believing in the crap I kept telling myself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, oh, yeah, no, you know what, man? You are pretty great. You know what I mean? I'm like, really? No, okay, yeah. That's what I was trying to tell y'all the whole time. Right. That's it. That's the one thing I overcame.
The most difficult choice I had to make to fulfill my own destiny was to come back to Virginia. Long story short, after being laid off twice, I went to New Jersey to pursue an opportunity or two. This community was very supportive of everything that I had done with my television career, and I was hoping to expand that going up north, and went up north, and nothing worked out. nothing worked out. And I had to come back here because I knew I was up there and I was becoming depressed. Relationships started to go south, and but part of me wanted to save face. I'm like, but the community, they were so supportive and they contributed in so many ways for me to get up here. I can't come back. That'd be embarrassing. But I had to make the decision to come back. And I realized in coming back, first of all, I learned that this community really, really does love me, because they weren't like, we knew you shouldn't have done that. We told you so. They were like, it's okay. It's okay. We'll help you get back on your feet, because I literally had to start from ground zero. I had no place to stay. I had no money. I had no job. And so I had to start from the bottom, And so, but it was a good decision because I was able to learn a lot about myself. I was able to learn a lot about, again, just people showing me the love of Christ in one of my darkest moments, and one of my most publicly embarrassing moments. Yeah, they were there. But as a result of me coming back, starting from the bottom, being humbled, basically is what happened. God opened up so many other doors.
Cutting loose from some of my homies, and feeling, cutting loose that feeling of being guilty for not like bringing them along with my vision, with where I was going with, because in retrospect, everybody had their own vision. Yeah. And with me not having the skill set for team building, and just automatically being a solo cat. Yeah, right. Sometimes your homies will make you will make you feel messed up for how you move or how you operate. And sometimes with that guilt, you make choices not to pursue what is for you, as opposed to what some of your homies may have as desires for themselves. Right. So I would say, cutting loose from some of my homies was a big one for me. Now I will add as a caveat that I haven't reached my destiny yet.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I haven't reached my full destiny yet, but in order for me to have taken the steps that I've taken thus far, and not only homies, but some of my own habits, cutting away from some of my own habits, and and the way that I dealt with women in the past. I had to cut that loose, man. I had to cut that, because that all those things were weighing me down and slowing me down from some higher elevations that's destined for me.
I haven't fulfilled all my personal destiny yet, so I'm still working on it.
Okay.
I don't think you should stop. I think, on the day I close my eyes, I will always aspire to be the best human being that I can be. And in being so, you're going to step on some people's feet, and you're going to climb on some people's shoulders. Ultimately, my biggest hope, and this may sound mundane, everybody else wants, I want to be rich, and I want to have a big house and a big career. You know what I want to have?
What's that?
I want to have a loving family. I want to have those children, those grandchildren, and I pray that the good Lord give me a chance to hold on to my first great-grandchild, lift them up, and know that my generations will be continuing as my parents and my grandparents have.
Something money can't buy.
The material things, People want the degree, and they want the notoriety. I want the family. I want the love. I want the continuum of a story that was started way back when. That's what I want. And in doing so, sometimes you have to make huge sacrifices. Even though whatever I've done for my children, I don't call them sacrifices. I call them just part of the plan in creating things that will be worthy to the world.
So if I would think about like my life with my wife, it would be, you know, and some people wouldn't call this a sacrifice, but just walking away from all of the other women, like the possibility of being with other women and having fun. So I would say, you know, possibly that. I just don't like to call that a sacrifice because it feels like I need to do that anyway. But then, so for me, one of the biggest things that we are doing in our life right now that I would definitely say is part of what I would consider like an accomplishment, destiny, is raising our children to be free thinkers and like have autonomy and like be raised to know that they like to have dignity and love for humankind. So the biggest sacrifice that I would say I have made thus far is simply, you know, not having for years we didn't have a 2-parent working household. Like my wife for a while was a stay-at-home mother. We homeschooled all of our children, and our oldest daughter is 9 years old, so she's never been in the school system. So we've sacrificed income for years so that we could homeschool. Now that our youngest children are 4, my wife has made very, very assertive efforts to get back into her creativity and earn income in those veins, be it photography, hair, singing, writing, all of those things she is very involved in again. And for a number of years now, maybe the last 3 or 4 years, there has been small efforts toward her making income and having her own in that way. But that has been one of the biggest sacrifices. I mean, we could have been making a lot of money for the last 9 years and not been so-called struggling as we have been, but because we see the need to raise our children and take responsibility in this way for them, and I like to say in this way because I believe everybody is taking responsibility for their children. We're just doing it in a way that's different than most of our counterparts. So I don't want to belittle anybody else's attempt. But we've decided that homeschooling and unschooling is the way that we want to be responsible for our kids and their brains and their life goals. And so that's been one of the most like impactful sacrifices that we have made, is operating off of one income so that we could achieve those goals. And again, now we're starting to get back into my wife being able to work more. So it's starting to be some relief there, but we just felt it necessary, man. And that's the biggest thing we have done so far, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had to come to terms with the fact that I am not the all important one. I am not the all knowing one. I am not the key to the world's, the answer to the world's dilemma.
It's not Davida, huh?
It's not Davida. And that was kind of hard because my value, I didn't know it at the time, but my personal worth was tied up in the need to be needed. Which is a sure sign of low self-esteem. I just had to be needed, so I had to answer the question. And yes, I will help every single body, but it wasn't rooted in love. It was rooted in a selfish, demonic need to be important. And when I gave it up,
how hard was that to give up? How did you come to that realization?
Because the outcomes in my life were so poor. I'm like, how can you give to this many people and everything still be an uphill battle? That's not jiving with like the biblical principle. Something is like there's a disconnect somewhere. And so that's what I found. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier in the interview when you said, yeah, some people give out of reasons that's maybe not all that altruistic, you know, not all of that selfless. And that's what it is. When we are selfish.
I don't think I had a destiny. Stop.
Have you?
I don't have a destiny.
Okay.
I haven't reached it. I never had a destiny. And again, I tried to do what I thought needed to be done as it was in front of me. When my father had a stroke, my mother called me, and I lived in New York. She said, you know, Gus, we called him Gus. Gus had a stroke. He's in the hospital. I just thought you should know. Well, there was no, you're going to go home. So there was nothing to do but pack up. I had a son, and I had a Karen Terrier. I don't have a picture of her. There's a little Yorkie. He's about to drive me crazy. But I had a Karen, and they make sense. And the three of us got in the car and, you know, sold what was in the apartment and went home because I knew she was going to need help. But that's not destiny. That's common damn sense. Your father is in the hospital. Your mother's called you, so you know that you're needing. So you go home and do that which it just needed to be done. I wrote a poem in the new book, which I don't have right now because it won't be out till the end of this month, and it's called I Married My Mother. And I realized that's what happened. I married Mommy because I stayed. He did die. And I don't mean it like that, but he did. And so that left her with me. And so, you know, we built a home together. And we actually moved here to Virginia Tech.
What is the hope for your legacy? Check out our guest again. What is the hope for your legacy?
I mean, I instantly think of my children. I think about people that I've had the fortunate opportunity to be, you know, impacted by and hopefully made some impact on. I think about those folks, and at the end of the day, I would hope that they would, you know, say or think, you know, he was honest and upfront, wanted to help. You know, I always told my kids when they were little, I said, you know, I'm not your friend. I'm not your playmate. I'm not your homie. I love you. You know, I'm your daddy. And my job is to, in love, prepare you for a world that does not love you. Bottom line. So when I do and say what I do and say, whether it's in discipline or in correction or redirection, that's in love. You're going to receive that out there, and it's not going to be. It's not going to be from the place of love. And I say that because my hope always had been for my children that I've raised, you know, intelligent, decent human beings that were respectful, you know, kind, independent, and thought for themselves, you know, because I could always leave them a bunch of money. I could leave them a facility with my name on the side of the building if that's what I want my legacy to be. And they could be the absolutely worst person in the world. I could leave them $1 million and they invent the next drug that's going to destroy. What did I do? What's my legacy at that point? Because I raised some, you know, some half-wits that were greedy, right? That's really part of my legacy. You know what I mean? And so my hope for my legacy is that my children are able to love and live independently, and you know what I mean, that I encourage them to be who they wanted to be, and kind of pursue their own calling and not feel like I was forcing them in any kind of direction. And then the people that I've just interacted with over the course of my life, I just hope that it's been positive and encouraging, and like, you know, hey, he's a decent dude. You see him? He's all right. You know what I mean? He's all right.
For many years, I thought a legacy had to be something that I could will to someone. And, you know, some material, something that, you know, some property, some money, some stocks, some bonds, some jewelry. But the older I get and the more I have seen that material things are here today and gone tomorrow.
Fleeting.
Very, very fleeting. And so if you want anything to last, it has to be built on something. Your treasure just can't rust or rot or be stolen. And so for me, my legacy is to show my children how to live their lives in relationship with the Lord, to, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
My children are huge. So I want to see them grow up to be responsible, productive, mindful people. Like, I really want to see them be whole and not deal with all of the hang-ups. They're going to have their own hang-ups, but I really want to see them escape some of the traps that are kind of normal for us as a black people. And I also want to see them take on the fight. Like, I want to see them feel the need to be involved. Some of us escape the hood and our children never go back to it. I don't want that to be my children. I want them to always be connected with the struggle, so to speak. And that doesn't mean they have to glorify it. Right. But I want them to always know that these are your people. Like, I don't talk about black people. I don't talk about the hood as if I have escaped it and it never will bother me again. Like, you hear some black people talking, it's like, black people need to get their act together. For me, it's like, we need to get our act together. Right. Like, I try not to separate. Even though I may have a different way of thinking, I know that I don't have to have this way of thinking. It has been hard work to have this way of thinking. And so I'm not any different. And so I want my children to live that way. Because they are the most important thing that me and my wife are doing, honestly, is raising children, raising young adults. Absolutely. And so I would want them to see the need to live the way that we're living. They don't have to be me. They could take on the fight in another way, but I would like to have them see the need to fight for their people and for the moving forward of humankind, like getting us to be united in a way. Other than that, I mean, superficial stuff, I want to be loved. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be missed when I'm gone to some degree. I used to want to be missed, like, how you got young cats that's like, they was the flyest, they was the, all of that stuff. That's real superficial. But at the same time, what else do you have when you come from the hood? Like, you want to look dope. You want to. So that's not me necessarily, but I used to want to be missed in a way that's like no one else can do what I'm doing. That has changed because that's not effective for the black community. If no one is left to do what you did, then who's going to do what you did? Like, who's going to carry it on? So I would rather now, the mindset that I have now is I would rather duplicate myself in younger people, not necessarily just my kids, but I would like to leave behind some other young people that will carry the flag, that will march on. And my legacy, like me, my presence will be missed, but not the work necessarily, because it's selfish to leave and the work can't be done anymore. And that's if I ever do something that is that impactful. To me, I do some stuff that's impactful, but, and moving forward, the barbershop is huge in our community. And so, when I left Jersey, some of the stuff that homeboy said to me, that I was kind of like, who I'm going to talk to now? Like, you were who I came to when I couldn't talk to my homeboys. Like, getting a cut from you, I got this type of information. I got that type of information. So for someone, that is very impactful. And so I don't want that to be lost. I would hope that I'm a part of shaping new barbers that will continue in that work as they take on this career path, because barbering is a huge thing in the black community.
I'll probably do. I might make a stamp.
Might make a stamp.
That'd be nice. I won't be here to see it, but it'd be nice, the Nikki. I don't know. That's not my problem. But I think that what I've done is to say something about honesty, and to say something about going forward, and to say something about living your own life.